Hello. Welcome to Rats Fun Happy Good Time number 4. I am Dylan Dish. I am the deputy of video games, and I am joined by.
I'm John Eric Hagstead, the arbiter of the religion of art, theater, and science, and I hope the buzz is coming through our earphones and not the recording device. I'll hand it back to Dylan because this episode is all about
Video games. You fixed it. Good job. Oh, well, fixed. Have you ever heard of Laura Croft?
yes.
Yeah. So, she was fairly attractive, right? As far as video game characters go?
Yes.
Yeah. So I really want to get my own YouTube channel going and talk about feminism in video games. I know it sounds kind of interesting topic, but women, how they're portrayed in video games is kind of outlandish and out there. It's like an anime or something, and you'll see many memes about it talking about women's armor in video games becoming a bikini versus a man getting, a full suit. I just think it's an interesting topic that people are too willing not to look at. Especially men trying to play these video games. They'll go into a GameStop and see if the person helping them is a female. They'll think that she does not know what she's talking about and that she doesn't play video games. I want to talk to some guy who knows his stuff, not you. Um, but back to the point of treating women differently within the realm of video games. I don't understand why, as far as the online culture and talking, are you a grill? That's the joke. They won't say girl, a grill. Are you a grill? Yeah, I know, just a shortened, are you a girl? Uh, and why not try to include women in these games, especially when the majority is heterosexual males? Aren't you hoping to find a partner who has similar interests? Why push these people away, this demographic away, just because they are not lockstep with you? It makes absolutely zero sense to me.
I think it's just when I touch it. What?
It was after you got shocked.
Weird. Here, grab it again.
You're more magnetized. The friction from your shorts.
What? Did it come back? Unreal. I'm gonna put
Pretty
some
cool.
shoes on.
You're just a good conductor. Flip flops are being equipped.
Okay, having headphones on did not make any difference.
Headphones coming back.
It was okay. How strange. This fits into the science of religion of art, theater, and science so well that we're going to take a moment away from games just for a second because we are standing down here in an old converted. Well, actually, this is an addition. It was part of the garage that was extended, but it's just concrete sitting right on ground. Okay, and right now I'm standing on the concrete with flip flops that I've just put on, and if I take my flip flop off, it does that. How neat is that? So the human being is a conductor because I'm holding the microphone with my hand right now. So some type of energy, some type of grounded, I think the ground might be being lost or something. I'm not sure what's going on, but that'll be something to look into, and hopefully I'll be able to inform you when this happens again and surprises us, and then I'll remember that I looked it up. But what an interesting thing. And if you know the answer, please leave a comment in whatever form you find this thing. What an interesting thing. Here it is again. I'm going to remove my flip-flop off my right foot only and place the right foot down and up and down, up. Interesting. Oh, how interesting. And I'm holding the microphone with my hand. Bare feet. Okay, let's go back to games wherever we were. What an interesting thing. Okay.
Oh, I don't even know where to go back.
Armor.
Body armor. Yeah, okay, so the treatment of just women in the games themselves, there are some magnificent. This is where I really will have fun doing it on a YouTube channel to show some images of large busted women hanging out, living their best life, and maybe they are badasses, but to deny that the treatment of women is different, I think is interesting. It seems kind of crazy to me. Why what accept it, see where you can move from there. I'm not saying we need to eliminate it necessarily, but to pretend like it's not a thing and that women are not being overtly sexualized in this medium is wrong. It's just not true. You can see it time after time that women are made to be the sexual objects because it's for the male gaze. It's coming out of men creating these games. Sex does sell, but because it's for the male gaze, the women are the ones who are always scantily clad.
So, as an offender of this, I always choose the gal. If there's an option to choose between the man and the woman barbarian or whatever you're playing, I'm usually the barbarian because I head straight into the fray and attack with whatever axe or sword I have. And usually I pick the gal because you're right. I would rather look at a woman the whole time I'm playing than the guy. So, it is because it is an artistic form and a form of entertainment, is the hypersexualization of these characters wrong? And I'm not saying, and you're talking about the disparity. So if we hypersexualize the guy character too, which sometimes they are, a little Speedo and no shirt and maybe tall boots, right? Some characters for different games. So if the game hypersexualizes both characters, is it better than when it just focuses on sexualizing the female character?
That's an interesting point, and I like that. There was a guy who I would totally link a description to a video because of this. There was a male whose chest was exposed, and they were saying, well, isn't that kind of sexualizing the male? However, in the context of this story, for whatever this game was, it was waking up beside the woman, looking and then blushing. This guy, bare chested, who shows up as a character, is the buffoon. He's the ragged, crazy buffoon, and it's not like there's ever a sexual feeling. He may look attractive, but it's not to the point of, oh, hi, how are you doing? I'm so sorry that we got in this situation together. And that's where the difference is. However, to answer that question specifically, sure, yeah, fine. If you are going to over sexualize characters to make them more appealing for your audience, include women or include bisexuals, homosexuals into your demographic so that we can all get that. I'm not saying that we should ban scantily clad women, but I'm not saying that we need to necessarily objectify everybody. But if we do it, why not let it be equal? I think that that would really help level the playing field. The problem is there are so many heterosexual men talking about different situations they don't potentially want to get into. They are making gay romance options within, Dragon Quest, a fairly popular game, or some of these larger, Oblivion, maybe more popular that you could have heard of, where they are including that option, a homosexual option, and there is rebellion against that. Not just because religious or political beliefs, but because straight men don't want to accidentally get in a situation where that could happen. They are so against that, where they're like, that would destroy the playing field for me. So no, please don't do this. Please don't include gay characters within the Star Wars MMO that was out, multiplayer online, mass multiplayer. Uh, it's been petitioned against, and just because they don't want to accidentally get in a conversation that could be somewhat even hinted at being romantic between two men. However, two women is fine, as we know. Yeah, right, great. But then, yeah, so, sure.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to defend that argument. I don't get it, and I honestly haven't heard of it because I'm not in that realm. But that game kind of sounds fun. So it's a mass multiplayer online Star Wars, and you go around and you can complete different missions, and you can be the good guys or the bad guys. I'm assuming, but who are the bad guys? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Right? Darth Vader's the bad guy. Stormtroopers are the bad guys. Right? Yeah. Well, I mean, just in the overall arc of the story, and was it this one that we were talking about Star Wars stuff, or was that the one before? Anyway, maybe we can recall into a. What do you think of the Mandalorian? Sorry to stray again from the topic, and maybe there's some way to wrap it in. But I really enjoy the Mandalorian. Oh, there is that that wrestling star and the drama surrounding her. Do you remember that? Oh, you didn't watch the Mandalorian? Oh my.
I only watched the first season of The Mandalorian, a little bit of the second one, so I don't have too much to comment on The Mandalorian, unfortunately. You enjoy it. Yeah.
Back to hypersexualization of characters, right? Because we didn't really flush it out all the way, I don't think. Unless we did we? Did you say you were okay with it as long as it went both ways? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then, so would you rather not have the game made if they will hypersexualize one sex over the other? Or would you be less likely to play a game that um, conforms to the homophobic fears of a percentage of their population just to make money?
Well, of course, yes. If I knew that it was strictly homophobic and that's why we didn't allow XYZ in there, then yes, I would be adverse to that. However, I'm not saying don't make the games at all. There are lots of times where documentations where women have been over sexualized and men aren't. That doesn't make the games worse or bad necessarily. I'm just talking about within feminism in video games, including women into this realm where it's becoming more popular to let women in. This could be a nice stepping stone. I'm not saying we have to go back and erase what had been previous. There are some really great things that came out of Tomb Raider. The director of it, the creator, initially said he didn't really want to over sexualize Laura Croft. He wasn't going to do that. So it was a game about her. She had a ponytail. Yes, she sure showed bare leg. But then he was fired from the project so that they could advertise her in a bikini. And so, I mean, and Metroid is a very popular game within the gaming community that lots of people wouldn't have heard of it if they weren't in that community. But that was about a woman specifically. That was 1989, 87, when it had come out, and she was the protagonist, the main protagonist. It was all about her. Uh, so
Sorry to butt in, but I think her paws were being caught. You just heard Shirley's nails on the wooden platform coming down into the library. It would just be, I think that would be jarring if you didn't know what that sound was.
Surely. Oh no, you're good. This is why we need like a bigger surround sound mic. We should have used that mic for this. Yeah. Metroid Samus. She was a character. She did it. However, the only issue with that is she was not scantily clad. Lots of people would not have, couldn't tell that she was female. They just assumed that she was male because she was in a full body suit. You couldn't see a face, and there was a gun. So they're like, "Oh, it's a guy, right?" So I think that that's interesting. But women have been included in video games since the beginning. Peach in the Mario franchise, Laura Croft, Shirley. She was the duck hunt dog. Yeah, train of thought, whatever. But Laura Croft, yeah. Yeah.
So Princess Peach was included in video games. So women have been a part of video games for a while. But was there a point at which in the history of video games that we saw the hypersexualization of female characters become more prevalent?
Well, when graphics got better. I mean, even Chung Li in Street Fighter, very popular. It was all about the legs. Oh my gosh, Chung Li had some really good legs. And I don't think that that's a problem. That's part of her character. She's a wonderful kickboxer. Chinese, she's great. We know these things about her. I'm glad that we got to see bare leg Chung Li. Woohoo. More people should be. But the only difference in issue I'm having is the homophobia that's creeping into it, where we have come to the point where legally gay marriage is now across the board. It's fine, okay by the United States of America. However, to include it into different games, now there is suddenly this backlash. No, we can't have that. I don't want to get in that situation. Or games where there are female protagonists that aren't necessarily attractive. No, that's not for my male gaze, so I'm not going to play that game. That's the issue that I think is really coming from all of this. And of course, trying to get the demographics of women into this medium. Women have been creating games, have been doing artistic design, voice acting, so many different integral parts of this community. Why the pushback? Why aren't we letting them in? Why aren't we handing them a controller and saying, hey, play with me? Let's play together. So that's my kind of question. That's where I'd like comments back, is to ask the majority of men who are out there who don't necessarily want to play games with a female or don't want advice from female coworkers at a GameStop, why try to exclude them from this club? I understand that maybe it was a boys' club first, and maybe that's how you had started your club. However, they're coming in. These are the people that you would eventually like to get together with. Maybe not those people specifically, but this demographic of people. Why are you trying to exclude them from a hobby that could potentially bring you together? That's what I would ask at the end of my whole, rant for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and if you couldn't tell, we're passing a single SM58 back and forth. We're doing kind of a sound check. The next video, we're going to use just the Moano mic and do 3 persons all in one room. Just in case you were an audiophile and wondering why there was a shuffling between each time we were talking. I was trying to be a politician about it and buy me time to figure out what to say to that. But there's nothing to say about that, right? There's no way to defend it or come up with a reason for it. They've just been excluding the rainbow community from representation in games for the large part. From what I understand, I'm not a huge gamer, but from the games I've played, I was trying to rack my brain the whole time. I mean, in high school, I played some whenever I went over to visit my buddies. I wasn't allowed games. I was too ADD with a little bit of H in there. So if I got into a game, then I would be gone for 8 to 10 hours, right? And that happens every now and then if I go hang out with one of my buddies. Which is nice, and I enjoy it. But we usually played Balderdash. No, not Balderdash. That's the board game. Baldur's Gate.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that one, the barbarian, and that one is a hypersexualized one too, right? The women are more scantily clad, and that's for every rank, or every category class. So right, but I'm trying to think: have I ever played a character who was gay, or bi, or asexual, or trans? Nope. Never in any video game. And why is that representation not there? Well, because only straight people play video games, of course. Well, we're all adult enough to know that's some bullshit. So, right. So let's bring it on the video game makers to be more inclusive of every population that's representative of who plays their games, because that's progress, and that's what we do as a society and as a race of human beings. We learn from our past mistakes, and we grow, and we use that new knowledge that we've learned, and we apply it to new methods that we utilize moving forward. Or we should. And that would be a good one to do that with, I think. I agree with Dylan. I can't speak to why it's been that way, but maybe well, actually I think I can. I think a lot of all of these withdrawals or hindrances or removals, ostracizations, whatever you may call it, of different minority groups from major companies is to appease what has long been thought as the major demographic of America, right? We're talking to us Americans in particular, right? Maybe it's different in Europe, but here it seems that for whatever reason, much of media, video games, news sources, Disney, movies, whatever it may be, TV, everything has a certain eye that is restricting what we see and hear in a framework of what is acceptable to Christian morality. So I think what we can say is that religious indoctrination. Can you tell I've been having a whiskey or two? Will you say the word for me?
Indoctrination
has had an influence on every aspect of our society. And how has that lack of representation affected several generations growing up when they don't see themselves represented? That must be tough. And I haven't been in that situation. So maybe I'll hand the mic to someone who has.
Sure. It can be frustrating. There was part of the. I'm going to backtrack for half a second, though, to go back to also answering the question of why. And yes, American culture, but also Japanese culture. And they are a major proponent of video games, where lots of them come from. Nintendo specifically. That's a Japanese company. So their views on homosexuality or what is correct and what isn't, I think you're right, does tie into religion and trying to make it all through that scope of being as religiously correct as possible. Also, male domination throughout, the globe has kind of been the thing that the men are the ones who are either making the money, have the jobs, they're going to be the ones spending the money on these products. So, for a long enough time, we haven't had to worry about the other demographics necessarily. And as far as the rainbow community, that wasn't something that was supposed to be talked about. I mean, maybe everyone knew what kind of happened, but it wasn't supposed to be ever in the forefront.
But you separate men away from rainbow community. I mean, there's men in the rainbow community, so I don't think men is. I don't know. To me, when I hear you say men, I'm like, well, wait a minute. But you're a man, right? So that's what I'm hung up on. So could you break that down?
Uh, Cisgender heterosexual males have had the majority of the power. And I would say there are lots of those who could be allies, sure, but they are what I think that was when I was talking about men versus the rainbow community or men versus women. This kind of domination that they have had and having to make everything for the male, kind of. Even scientific research finding out about homosexuality and that there might be a link to the gay gene was done on research with men, not with women so much. They eventually have been doing more studies, but it's men first. As far as erectile dysfunction, we fixed it. We know how to fix the man problems. Women's issues are not as nagging or persistent because they are not as important, question mark. It's just been so geared towards men. And yes, there are men in the rainbow community, but a lot of this isn't geared for men in the rainbow community. However, I will say that even when there are games that have homosexual content, usually made by a indie company, just trying to get an up and starting on something, it is more male dominated then. And that's why we go back to Laura Croft and feminism and trying to include women, because even in the rainbow community kind of games or things geared towards LGBTQ, XYZ uh, individuals, it's male dominated and thinking what men would appreciate more within the community versus I can't tell you the last time I played a lesbian relationship game. I know of one, but I heard that it wasn't necessarily what lesbians wanted to see.
Zelda?
No. I just wanted to get that laugh recorded. Yeah. Zelda's female. Link is male. Maybe he looks too feminine. I'd like to explore lesbianism within Zelda.
I once you informed me of that, because I always thought Zelda was a dude. Because I never played video games, so I saw Zelda played one time, and I heard people talking about it all the time. I always thought Zelda was a dude, and then you told me about that, and so now I think Zelda is Pat.
I love it. Yeah. Well, Zelda, for the video game, one video game fan potentially listening to this in 30 years for I don't know what reason. If there are multiple people listening, Zelda transforms into Sheik, and Sheik looks male. Ooh, there you go. I don't know how that ties into everything, but maybe Zelda is Pat. Yeah. You don't know, is it a he? Is it a she? You're always asking weird questions. Yeah. There's my representation. Zelda transforming into Sheik. Women, you're in the game. You just have to disguise yourself as a man and suddenly you'll get cared about. I promise. Yeah. Woohoo.
So then, thoughts on? Wow, did you hear that slight little buzz? The side of my foot was touching the concrete. Just, just the toe. Just the toe. ASMR. Just the toe. Yeah, pink. It was the side of it. It was more like the side of the foot. It was like the the heel of the. Well, it wasn't the heel of the foot. It was like the pad of the foot. The pad of the side of the pad of the foot. Side of the pad. Side of the pad. I totally forgot where we were. Oh, I was gonna ask you about Ms. Pac-Man, because what about that? That was pretty early on, right? Pac-Man came out, and then just a couple years later, Ms. Pac-Man. So Ms. Pac-Man, sweet words, and I would argue that Ms. Pac-Man was not over-sexualized.
You're 100% correct. Just like Samus in Metroid in 1987 was not over sexualized. Mrs. Pac Man was still regularly played by everyone. Mrs. Pac Man did it better than Pac Man, let's not lie. There was co op. Mrs. Pac Man was cool. You could be Mr. Pac Man if you really didn't need the bow on your head. But games geared specifically for women, that's where it falls apart. The bow really is yeah. If it's Tetris with bows on it, I still think that men would play it. That's the one big thing. If it's that's also where it's kind of frustrating. Like if it's a female protagonist that isn't hypersexualized, if it's not Laura Croft where you're wearing a crop top and your legs are visible, then why play the game? You know.
For the adventure, and I've actually never played it. I don't know, but I would imagine that Lara Croft is a game about seeking treasure, getting through some obstacles to get there, and then once you get the treasure, you get fooled, and you thought you had the treasure, but then you have to go look for more treasure. I don't know, something like that. So then wouldn't it be about the challenge of the game? Like, I don't play Castle Crashers because the blue one is fucking hot.
Shouldn't it be, though? Shouldn't it be about the pleasure of the game? And I'm glad that the blue one is fucking hot. We need more, I'm totally fine with that. I love Chung-Li. I love her legs. Laura Croft was great. That was a good, game. But we can also include women on the fun and maybe even men as well. Gay men. Homosexuals.
Okay. Chun-Li was hot, especially when she was kicking the shit out of the car. Not denying it. But in the same game, correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, red pants, no shirt, is less clothed than Chun-Li.
Ken had a shirt. Look it up. Oh, your argument is in shambles. Yeah, you're right. Sagat, he only had a pair of trunks on. Delsham, the Indian monk who could breathe fire in his arms. Yeah, sure. Sure. They had less clothes on than the female. How is that not more over sexualizing the men? Well, it's because of the story that's being told. Chung-Li, there's stories. Everyone gets their own ending. Well, Chung-Li is avenging the death of her father, so it's not like it's over sexualizing her in a story necessarily. But in these games, those men weren't necessarily supposed to be sexually attractive. It wasn't to seduce necessarily. You could say, yeah, it was hot that he had less clothes on, but that's where I really want to link this other guy's video and show some circumstances of where women are over sexualized versus men. However, in Street Fighter, you might have a point there. Just because if it's just about the body form, then sure, maybe. But Ken also had a shirt on. And his hair, that's a wig. The color, the pigmentation, there's no way. Ryu was way better.
He was wearing a wig. It does. He kind of does look. But there was more than the long arm dude that didn't have a shirt on. Anyway, we can. I know what you're saying. I'm just trying to be the devil's advocate because that's what I'm good at. And you might be hearing Shirley bark in the background. She's probably looking at some birds out the window or the neighbors pulling into their driveway. So nothing to worry about here. We're all safe. This is a safe place. I hope everyone realizes that when you're listening to Ratscast, you're in a safe place. And if you're not in a physically safe place, you can always contact one of our members or one of the leaders of rats, either the deans or the deputies. If you ever feel like you're in an unsafe situation, either physically or mentally, please reach out to somebody because we care. We care about you. Even if we joke about Chun-Li and other characters, we care.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be more fun if you could get your 2 cents in? Why not come to one of the meetings? You don't even have to come in person. You can be in your own safe space and just join from our fun, happy Facebook page. I mean, more discussions. You could say, hey, F you, you're wrong. And I'd be able to hear about it instead of, this all just going into nothing and nowhere. So join Rats. Come join the conversation. What did you think about Chung-Li's legs? Were men more sexualized because Ia Honda didn't have a shirt on? Yes, he was giant and a sumo wrestler, but some people are kind of for that. There's this thing about feeding women so much that you've got ownership of them. What is that about? Yeah. See, these are conversations you could be having with us instead of, just kind of vicariously living it through us. You could be a part of it. So consider that.
Be a part of it. New York. We're not in New York, actually. We're in Longview, Washington. But I think where we're at we'll be safe for, 70, 80 years before we see water at our doorstep, so we'll be all right. Okay. Well, maybe not. Maybe we shouldn't say that, but all right, we're gonna kill it for this episode. Episode? Is that right? Is that the right terminology? Doesn't really matter. See, if you try to exit right when I say this is the end, then you're gonna miss out on like 3 or 4 more minutes of wonderful, delightful nonsense that we're inevitably going to share because he thinks it's done. But I know that I'm going to continue it on for another couple of minutes and make him say another thing here in a second. Onomatopoeias. Pow. Bam. Now, how effective are onomatopoeias and why is that? No, we don't need to get into that. That's a whole nother discussion that's very much longer. It's not more important. There's no conversation that's more important than the others, other than, I would argue, climate change, freedom of speech, right? Constitutional rights in America. Nepotism, yeah, and necrophilia. Yeah. I mean,
necrophilia really needs to be addressed more often. It happened way too many times to me personally. I wasn't dead, but somebody did push me on the body, and I feel guilty about it, and I don't know what to say. But I think that's why necromancers are so fun to play in video games. I tied it back in. You were going to make me say something? Was that it? You just wanted to hear my necrophilia story? It was twice, okay?
I'm good for anything 3 times. You don't really know until the 3rd time. All right. I think with that, we will end RATScast4. And this was Mic Test SM58, passing back and forth between I, John Eric Hagstead, the arbiter of the religion of art, theater, and science.
And I, DIsch, the deputy of video games for the religion of art, theater, and science. And we learned a valuable lesson. Humans are conductors. Look at that. Peace out, Girl Scout 420 YOLO swag.